while the world in the marketplace right now are looking for top talent. And if you are recognized as one of those brands, they're going to come for you. You're going to get headhunted. Become the best version of yourself. Do good work. The problem is when we open our mouths, the impact is sometimes not felt. As a parent, we want to discipline our children, but we choose the wrong words. And therefore, the impact, the disconnect between intention and impact is often felt. In leadership, that's what happens. Leaders want to bring out their best in their people. I have no doubt about that. But when they start using abusive languages and words that hurt people, then the impact will not be felt. And that's why we have the challenges of toxic cultures. We are on a drive to create psychological safety. You see, people and human beings are not born with negative intentions. It's our experience over time in our lives that make us hard on the outside. And we get into the defense mechanism and we go into protectionism. I mean, you know the psychology around that, I'm sure.
So, hey Jayson, it's great to have you with us. I mean, for people who are dialing in today, can you share, what it is they're going to learn from this podcast today, and really what your expertise is?
Ralf, firstly, thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in this podcast. I'm really excited to share a little bit about my background and also the importance of leadership. I think, we can change many things, but one of the hardest things that we need to change is leadership. I think if we fix the head, they say that fish rots from the head. And if we fix the leadership component of leaders in families, in communities, in organizations, in government, we may fix the bigger problem or the issues that we face in the world. My passion stems from the constructs of servant leadership, but general leadership as well as a tool that we can use to have a positive influence on the world around us. I grew up in a little town called Amkomas on the south coast of Durban. I don't know if you've ever heard of the town called Amkomas. We call it the original UK, Amkomas. And I was born and raised on a little farm, and really it was a wonderful life. Grew up with my dad being a missionary and my mum being a wonderful servant to my dad, and learned so many lessons. My foundations were built on leadership at home through the eyes of my parents. And that's where my journey began from a very young age. And as I grew up and went to school and completed my schooling in the 80s, during difficult times, as we all know the history of our country. But one of the things my parents taught us from a very young age, don't make excuses, find solutions. I think oftentimes we can look and blame things around us, but I think at the very essence of leadership is how do we lead ourselves first so that we can, respond, not just react to what's happening around us. Of course, we were not treated fairly growing up in the 80s and not given what we needed to be given, but we persevered through the adversities, through the struggles, and here we are today, many years later. And I'm excited to share a little bit about my journey and my leadership point of view. And that's in essence what I'll be sharing with our audience today, and also embedding the Blanchard work that I'm very passionate about, which really catapulted me fast forward into the future in where I am right now. I serve on the Blanchard team here in Africa. In fact, I just returned from Uganda after 23 days serving MTN there as a client. And I arrived back yesterday, so I'm still a little bit tired from my trip, being away so long from my family. But it's been a great journey, Ralf. And
can you tell us about that leadership journey that you have been on?
So I think from a very young age, being raised by a missionary parent taught us that we had to take responsibility from a young age. I was the typical PK, the pastor's kid who ran away from my faith and everything else, wanted to enjoy the pleasures of life. But for some odd reason, leadership always attracted me. My first leadership role, I would say, was when I was a captain of our school cricket team back in 1987. I was in grade 7 when I joined the team, and I was catapulted, you're the captain, and they just chose me to be the captain. And between 1987 and 1989, I captained the team. And I remember that as a captain of the team, we had players in my team that were not the best of players, but they were the guys in school that never felt a lot of pain. So they were the ruffians of my schooling colleagues, my friends in school. And I brought them together as a band of players to play the game of cricket. Now, Umkomar Secondary was a school I attended, and none of us had ever played, professional cricket or any cricket, but we started playing for the school team. And what had happened was we self-taught the game of cricket. So I went to the library and I got cricket books on how to bowl, how to bat, how to field, and I used to come back onto the field and I used to coach my team. So already I'm leading a group of players to play the game of cricket. And by the end of 1989, our school, Umkomar Secondary School, for the very first time, won the Southern Natal Cricket Championship. We were the champion team. We won all our games in the southern regions, and everybody was surprised. What happened? How did this happen? And I realized it started 2.5 years ago when we started playing as a team, and we started growing as a team. And thankfully, 4 of my teammates were selected to play Southern Natal. And unfortunately, I was writing my metric exams, and I decided not to go for that. But I continued playing the game of cricket after I left school, played action cricket when I moved up to Johannesburg. So I think leadership from a young age, being influenced by my parents, my dad being a missionary and doing all the wonderful work in the community. We grew up in abstract poverty, living in a tin house with no electricity and running water. But we never saw it as a burden from a young age, because my parents taught us, don't look at the challenge, look at the opportunity. And I think it's that mindset of leadership that you need to grasp and grapple on. So I think that's where I was thrown into the deep end. And obviously leading a team of players in the game of cricket taught me the whole idea of how to pull a team of people together with a common goal, and then becoming successful at that point. But never had formalized training, never studied any of the stuff, just picked it up. I think probably looking at my parents and seeing how they led us. But the foundation, I think, was from a young age is on the premise of servant leadership. My dad served the local community, he served people, and he just loved people. And I think that's the basis of leadership for me and what I've learned from a young age. And I normally sing the song. Would you mind if I sing a little bit for you? So the people that know me and the work that I've done with some of my corporate clients as well, I normally go into a little bit of a song and I sing like, whoa, what's love got to do with it? And then I pause and I say, let me just say that love has got everything to do with leadership. The two cannot be separated in my view. And so I grew up with that premise. I think the foundations were set from a young age that love and leadership cannot be separated. I've seen it through the eyes of my parents and the way they served others, even when they didn't have, they gave. And so the art of generosity came about, the old tenets of generosity and giving away your last and the littlest that you have to serve other people. And I saw that in my parents. My parents were not wealthy, but yet they used to have people around all the time, poorer people than them, and giving off whatever they had to them. So that whole concept of generosity, Ken Blanchard puts it so nicely. Now when I see it, he says, we must be generous with our time, our talent, our treasure, and our touch. And when I look back, I never studied that. And I heard Ken Blanchard speak about that in the last probably 10 years and realized, man, that's exactly what my parents did. They gave away their time, their talents, their treasure, and their touch. They just loved on people. And that's what leadership is all about. And fast forward a few years, in 2007, my dad at the age of 60 had a massive heart attack and he passed away. And I believe that was a turning point for me. In 2007, a turning point in the sense we were at the funeral and I'm the eldest of 4 children and there were over 10,000 people at his funeral. And while sitting at that funeral, later on realizing my dad touched so many people's lives from different faiths, different walks of life, different religion, different cultures, different colors. There's a lot of people. There were queuing up. I mean, to this day, when I go to Durban and the people that knew my dad always reminds me, man, your father's funeral was such and such and such. And the question that came up at that funeral is, what will I be remembered for one day? As a leader, as a parent, as a community builder, as somebody that influenced others, he made a huge difference in other people's lives. And the stories we heard, the lives that he saved, the money that he gave away. And I sat there thinking, what is this leadership that my dad had? It's something that was so remarkable in touching the lives of others. And, in a program that we run in leadership, we always ask the question, who has been your biggest influence? And we find that your biggest influence, it starts with your family, your immediate family, somebody closest to you. And my next question to people is, have they got a PhD in leadership, that they've given you the power of leadership through their influence, the positive influence, the values that they live, that you've got, that's living in you? And so, having learned all of these things, I've gained a perspective that other people's fruit may be growing on our trees, but other people, give to you as they're part of their influence, a part of their lives, has been invested in me to take it forward. And so I read a lot. I love to read. And one of the books that I picked up about 10 years ago or so, actually 15 years now, my time has gotten past me, was a book by Dr. Miles Monroe. And it's called Passing It On. And in the book, he makes a bold statement, and many of you may have heard this before, that the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but a life without purpose. And so in my journey, I started to start digging now. What is my purpose? What is my why? What do I want to be remembered for? What are the things that I need to do to serve? And so over the last 25 years, I've been serving in community development work. We run volleyball tournaments, and we used to raise funds to feed the poor, and blanket drives. We were part of a community-based work here in Midrand and in Alberton when I came up to Johannesburg. So, all the while we're just trying to give back. And in 2012, it dawned on me while reflecting on our journey of helping the poor and the needy. Hold on a second. It just dawned on me. I promise you this is how it came to me in 2012. Jayson, remember that old Chinese proverb that says, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach him how to fish and you feed him for life. You remember that? And it came to me, just remember. And I went and spoke to a friend of mine, and he said to me, Jay, what are you talking about here? I said, we need to educate and create a space for leadership development. And that's where the whole journey started, from a formal perspective, where we now started doing leadership development programs across the country, across the world. I serve on a board in the USA for a nonprofit organization, and we do a lot of work around the world. And these are nonprofit. And the greatest gift my parents gave me is to give without asking for anything in return. I think that's the greatest blessing in your time, your talent, your treasure, and your touch. And so in my journey, I'm an aspiring servant leader, Ralf, and still have a lot to learn in life. But one of my greatest influences has been the great Ken Blanchard. Many know him of the 1 Minute Manager book that he wrote and the world stuff that he does. He's become a personal friend and a mentor to me. And I've learned from him that the greatest characteristic of leadership is humility. And it's not claimed, it's seen by others. And so through this journey of leadership, more and more I'm learning that we can influence people positively or negatively, but the way people see you as a leader attracts them to that leadership. And we can't change everybody, which leads me to my third and final quote, or maybe not my final quote, but this is the one that drives, I think my late friend Jeff Govender and myself came up with, is my great-great-great-great-grandfather said this once: be the change you want to see in the world. It wasn't my grandfather, that was Mahatma Gandhi that said that. But I believe in being that change, Ralf. We run, student self-leadership programs where we teach young kids how to lead themselves. We run programs for adults. We're doing a lot of work around communities, and I don't want to, shout my own praises, but I want to inspire people that's watching this podcast. We all can make a difference. Doesn't matter where you come from. Let me just redefine what leadership is. This is what I learned from Ken Blanchard and Phil Hodges. This is a definition of leadership. Anytime, and I added this piece in bracket, anytime anyone seeks to influence the thinking, the behavior, or development of another person, they're taking on the role of a leader. Now, if you listen to that definition of leadership right there, what it tells me is that you don't need to have a qualification to lead. You don't need to have the status. You don't need to have the money. You don't need to have anything to lead. Just by the power of influence, you can lead. And I tested this even further, where you see that a 5-year-old can lead us. They have the power of influencing. I don't know about you, but I had boys. My boys are now 18 and 21. And when they were much younger, they used to influence us to go to McDonald's instead of us wanting to go to Spur. We used to change our thinking and our behavior. And they've developed us as well, and they have the power of influence. A person on the street that's begging, if you ever had a conversation with somebody that's not working, or that's impoverished, listen to what they have to say. They have the power to influence our thinking, our behavior, and our development. So I've come to the belief that everyone is a leader. It's just that we're not exercising the power of positive influence on other people to bring about the change in their thinking, their behavior, and development. So when I think about leadership and I speak about the philosophies around leadership and servant leadership, we sincerely believe, that it's about influence, nothing more, nothing less, and we all have the power to do that without having to get a qualification to do that.
And so, Jayson, those are interesting things you said. I mean, people seem to have powerful influence. I suppose that the question is it nurture or is it nature? I mean, do you think people are gifted with it, or can we in fact learn it?
So it's a beautiful question, Ralf, and I often get asked the question, are leaders born or are they created? I mean, that's similar to what you're asking there. And my simple response to that is, if they weren't born, where did they come from? That's just a rhetoric there. The thing is this, leaders can be developed. I believe that, and I asked this to my audience wherever I do some work. I said, how many of you raise your hands, and I'm raising both my hands, and Ralf, you can join me. How many of you have got what we call blind spots? Raise your hands. Right? I raise both because my wife will tell you that. I've got too many blind spots, things that I can't see in myself that others can see. And oftentimes, there's this philosophy that we have at Blanchard companies. We talk about intention versus impact. Intention versus impact. Now listen to this piece, and I'll come back to the whole thing about, are leaders nurtured or are they born or created? So here's the thing. We all, I believe as human beings, we all have good intentions. In our heart, we want to bring correction. We want to give feedback. The problem is when we open our mouths, the impact is sometimes not felt. As a parent, we want to discipline our children, but we choose the wrong words. And therefore, the impact, the disconnect between intention and impact is often felt. In leadership, that's what happens. Leaders want to bring out their best in their people. I have no doubt about that. But when they start using abusive languages and words that hurt people, then the impact will not be felt. And that's why we have the challenges of toxic cultures. We are on a drive to create psychological safety. Really, we want to create an environment where people feel free to express themselves, fear of worrying about what people or leaders think, because they must be able to share their best. Therefore, innovation and creativity comes around. But I can give you data based on that. But getting back to your point, I believe that many people, many of us, including myself, I'm a learner. I'm not an expert in leadership. I'm learning. But here's the thing. I think we all have this blind spot, and it's a realization that can be nurtured. It's a realization that we have the power within us to lead. We have what it takes to lead. It's about accepting that we can lead, that we all are leaders. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, what am I going to do with it? And
I mean, what you're saying sounds interesting. Let's say that you feel that you're lacking in your leadership capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the tools or the things that someone should be looking at? What are the most important areas that they should be looking at if they wanted to become a better leader? Maybe they're young and they're looking to grow their careers. Maybe they've got a young family and they're looking to take on responsibilities with that family. What are the easy things that they should take on? Or is it the harder things that are more important?
I think always begin with the easy things, Ralf. The easier things are easier to solve for. And at the very get-go, I think the easiest thing is to say, whenever you open your mouth to speak to anybody, does your intentions match the impact? And it's very visible because you can see it in how people feel. And we believe this, and this is what we teach at Blanchard, is that what we think in our heads it comes from a place of how we feel about how somebody treats us based on that person's behavior. So 3 important elements is, as leaders, do we watch our behavior? Because our behavior has a direct influence on how people feel about us and how they think about us. And that will make them respond in a way that will give us the whole, or they will be reserved and hold back. So at the very get-go, the question is to ask is does our impact match? Does the intention match the impact? That's the first thing. I think the second thing for me, at the very easiest part, is the discussion around the what versus the how. And then it links up to the why. So let me start off with the why. We ask this question, do leaders understand why we lead? What is the very core? What is the purpose behind leadership, Ralf? And for me, as I mentioned earlier, it's about influence, positive influence. We talk about positive leadership today, right? It's about that positive influence. And really, when we talk about positive influence, we dig deeper. I dig deeper and I ask the question, what do you think leadership is all about? And it goes into your heart. It reaches your very core of your heart. And when I talk about the heart of leadership, I refer to what is your intentions and your motives for leading. Is it based on the theory of WIFM, what's in it for me? Or is it about what's in it for us? All of us. So many years ago, I spoke on servant leadership as a defining moment. And I said it like this. I said, oftentimes servant leadership is misunderstood and therefore people don't want it, right? So when we talk about leadership and servant leadership in this context, we said that servant leadership, the general comment in the market or everywhere in the world is servant leadership is putting the needs of others before yourself. That's the general comment. So I looked at this and I said, hold on a second, there's something missing in this definition. And I rewrote it. And this is my view, take it or leave it. I said, putting the needs of others before yourself, but not at the detriment of yourself. You see, none of us can pour from an empty vessel. Therefore, leaders need to take self-care into consideration when you're serving others. And then Ken Blanchard said it so nicely when he coined it. He said, servant leadership is not the inmates running the prison. You've got to understand your role and your responsibility. And I think at the very outset, Ralf, it's about your mindset, it's about your heart set, and then it's about your skill set. You see, having the skill set alone may not help you as an effective leader. But there's three components that I always believe. And if anybody wants to learn about leadership, you've got to have the heart set, the mindset, and the skill set, and all three works together. I can expand on that if you'd like me to share more. But the heart set is your very why, right? Why do you do the things you do, right? Your skill set is the what that you do. It's the metrics. It's the measurement of what you do. It's about how do you get value out of it? How do you measure that your leadership is falling on good ground? And we have some theories around that, and we have some solutions to show you on skill set. And the mindset is clearly how do we show up? How do we speak to people? How do we communicate? So it really is amongst those three, why, what, and how, and starts with the why. I think Simon Sinek said that. Michael Jr. said it. If you know your why, then your what becomes more impactful and purposeful. So it goes to that very core of looking at yourself in the mirror and asking yourself as a leader, am I here to serve or be served? That's what Ken Blanchard asks us all the time. Am I here to serve or be served?
So, I mean, for you and I, who possibly understand these things, I think this is great. For other people out there, and maybe some of our viewers, they might have some colleagues, and we know the research around toxic colleagues and managers. People don't leave companies; they leave managers.
Yes,
poor leaders. What advice can we give for someone who is struggling with a poor leader?
Right, that's a great question, Ralf. I think to start off with is to make this comment to say, none of us can change anyone else, but we can change ourselves. And I often get asked this question, Jay, what advice would you give me? I'm working for this very toxic, narcissistic leader. How do I give my best in an organization? And I'm learning this old thing on a situational approach to leadership. I'm learning about trust from you, Jayson. I'm learning about conversational capacity. I'm learning about leading myself. But how do I give my best if I'm working for a leader that doesn't appreciate me, doesn't give me what I need, and they are so toxic that I'm forced to? Now, there's two things that I want to raise here. Poor leaders that are watching this, shame on you, first and foremost. You are causing people to get sick. The World Health. Well, some of them do know, some of them don't know. But for those that do know, so let me put it.
How would they know if they don't know? How do we get them to know?
Right. So we have this concept of leadership malpractice. Have you heard of it before?
Never.
All right, so let me teach you about leadership malpractice. So we're creating some awareness around leadership malpractice. We've been doing it for a few years now. I did an interview with somebody in 702 many years ago when we first launched Blanchard South Africa. Here's what it is. When you go to a doctor, the doctor diagnoses you And its goal is to give you what you need to get better. If he doesn't, there are great probability that he may misdiagnose you, which may lead to medical malpractice, and he can go to jail for that. But what we're finding in leadership right now, whether they know or they don't know, when they don't give their people what they need and want, it's what we call a leadership malpractice. There's a disconnect between direction and support versus the needs of the people on their development levels, on their goals. And when that happens, people are struggling. They are actually fighting a losing battle. They've been set up for failure. And these leaders sometimes are oblivious to the fact of what their behaviors are. Mm-hmm. What we do is we create that awareness. So the first thing is we need to become aware of our actions and behaviors. We have a wonderful tool called leadership, LBA2, Leader Behavior Analysis. And in that leader behavior analysis, we have 20 questions, very powerful 20 questions, and we ask leaders everywhere around the world to complete it. And our research has found that 99% of leaders, good or bad, have got it wrong. They're not giving people what they need and want. And it's unconsciousness, it's blind spots, call it what you may. But here's the thing, those leaders that are taking advantage of other people, I find that a lot in Africa. In my time that I spend in Africa and the work that I do in Africa, these leaders are your narcissistic leaders. They are willingly punishing people because they are aware of the plight of unemployment in our countries in Africa. And therefore, they will take advantage of good human beings, and they will lead with authority and power and dominion and hurt because they don't really care. Of course, when asked the question by the team members, as you started by asking me, what do we do? My response is, listen, I can't change the leader around me. And the other thing is, you've got to understand that nobody can motivate us. So I know there's a whole lot of stories around motivation. I don't believe in that. I don't believe anybody can motivate another person. I believe human beings can inspire, you can equip, you can empower, you can train, you can coach, you can mentor, but I don't believe you can motivate other people. However, as good leaders, the great ones, the great leaders of this world, what they do in a book that Susan Fowler wrote, it's called How Motivating People Does Not Work and What Does. It's very clear that none of us can motivate people, but what we can do is create what we call an optimally motivating environment for people to thrive. That means you give the people what they need and therefore avoid this leadership malpractice that I speak about. And we've created awareness. And a lot of the leaders that we speak to, they come afterwards and say, Jay, I just realized something. In all my years of leading others, I made a mistake. And here's the mistake that's been made. We're leading people as opposed to leading the people on their goals. It's a big fundamental shift now, because what we teach at Blanchard's situational approach to leadership, SL2, which is the world's most taught leadership training program, if you haven't heard of it, it teaches us that leadership is about leading people towards achieving a goal. Therefore, you don't diagnose the person, you diagnose the goal that the person needs to do. Fundamental shift in thinking there, Ralf, and the leaders tell me this around the world. I've trained this for years now. They say the same thing. There's an example. Can I give you an example?
Sure, I'd love to.
I was in Mauritius, and I went and taught a whole EXCO team on leadership on the same program, on a situational approach to leadership, that leadership must be flexible. There was a COO who was sitting and having tea at 3 o'clock in the afternoon after doing the training, and he's staring down at his cup just like this. And it was evident to me there's something going on in his head. And I was across the hall, and I went running to him. And I asked him, I said, are you okay? He says to me, Jayson, it's just dawned on me that for my last 30 years in leadership, I've got it wrong. I've been diagnosing people, and I've been malpracticing leadership. I've been hammering people to achieve goals. Instead of looking at the goal of the person and not treat people badly. So each person has different goals. That means they can't be bad at all of them. Maybe they are, but there's one or two goals that they may be good at. So why don't we praise them on the good ones and then rehabilitate them on the bad ones? But in the past, we just paint a brush across the human being and saying, you are a bad performer. You need to go for PIP, performance improvement. We change that fundamentally, Ralf. And I think it's a shift in the way we lead. And leaders need to become aware that our behaviors, nothing less, nothing more, whether you're a good person or a bad person, ultimately behavior drives people's trust in us. It's the behavior. So it's really, and that leads to people feeling. And therefore, at the very core of leading others and treating, it's to say, let's lead ourselves first. So just to give you your answer, quick answer, when people say, what must I do? I say, become the best version of yourself. Prove to that kind of leader that even if he doesn't appreciate you, you become a brand and your competitors will come after you. So we teach leaders and people around the world, individual contributors, listen, irrespective of what other people do, give it your best. If it becomes untenable for you to work in that toxic environment, then do the right thing. Don't make yourself miserable. The World Health Organization has published data, and we've seen this now recently, that bad leaders, toxic leaders, are causing ill health, stress-related ill health for people, which leads us to anxiety, depression. Now we have mental health that's thrown into the bucket. So the information is out there. I mean, you don't have to believe me, but listen to what the data is saying. Bad leaders are closing down organizations. Bad leaders are making people sick. And we believe this. At Blanchard, we believe this. We believe in the heart of human achievement. That's what we believe. We believe in connecting people to people, and people are not a number. We believe that we must empower leaders for good. That's one of our taglines, powering leaders for good. And what is that good? Treating people as human first. You know, when I introduce ourselves, and I do this sometimes with some of my leadership training, I ask leaders and I say to them, can I ask you to do me a favor? Write down your title on a piece of paper. And they all write down their head off and directors. And I said, okay, wrap it up nicely and small. Come with me outside the room. There's a bin there. Throw it outside. Come back into the room. In this room, there's no titles. We are human first. Can we be human first in this room? Can I get your permission before I ask for forgiveness later? So it's really about being that human element, Ralph. And it comes down to, you know, the question I ask leaders is this: what do you want to achieve? And the first answer is results, right? You ask any leader, what is your greatest outcome? Productivity, results.
Well, that's what they get paid for. They get paid on the results.
Absolutely. But hold on a second. I said, hold on a second. Don't you believe that if you add another thing to that, you'll get more than just results? They said, what are you talking about? I said, have you ever thought about relationships? Have you thought about relationships? What happens if you build great relationships with your people? What happens if you create great relationship with your customers, with your shareholders, with the entire ecosystem? What would happen? And then the penny drops. You see, sometimes we focus a lot on the results at the expense of people. And Ken Blanchard puts it so powerfully. Profit is the applause you get for taking care of your people who will take care of your customers. You know, we've got a white paper that we've written called Leadership Profit Chain that talks about the 3 ways of getting a sustainable organization. We talk about organizational vitality, employee work passion, and customer devotion. Of course, business is in the place for making money, but I say it like this: money is like air. As humans, we need air to breathe, but that's not the purpose of life. Business, you need to reevaluate what you're actually wanting to achieve, because you can get the best of both worlds if you do it a little bit differently. Sorry to interrupt you there, Ralph.
Yeah, I mean, there's two key thoughts, I suppose, that's swirling in my head. The one is that I know of a leader of a listed company that's making a profit, and I would say that they're probably a little bit older, probably due to retire, if not should have retired already. It's clear the sentiment is that they're very toxic. And at the late stage they're in their career, there's that they're going to retire, are they, aren't they? You got the feeling that they're not going to really be open to this sort of way of dealing with things, because they've done things in a profitable way for so many years. What would your advice be to people who are in these sorts of organizations, or to the shareholders of these organizations? Because they're also being probably manipulated by the same person.
100%. Ralph, I think it goes back to the very core. And what is that core? What is the heartbeat of the organization? And do you care? The heartbeat of every organization is its people. Do you care? That's a question, right? And it's a choice. Leadership is a choice, Ralph. We can't force every single leader around the world to adopt the ideology that to take care of people. We can't do that. I can't do that. Nobody can do that. Yeah. It's a choice. All I can do is present a case to you. And I can present you with factual information based on that.
And so how do you present a case with the factual information to this type
Right.
of leader?
So we've got what we call data-driven statistics. So there's a book written by Raj Sisodia, Sheth and Wolf. It's called Firms of Endearment, not to be confused with the movie Terms of Endearment. Firms of Endearment. And Sisodia, Raj Sisodia, is a phenomenal guy, and he's a professor. And I've been tracking him for years. He wrote an article on conscious capitalism. And the premise that they believe and that they've written on, which I've studied and researched myself, is on the premise of taking good care of your people, how to love and care for them. That's why I asked the question, what's love got to do? It has to do everything, right? It's not the Valentine's Day love I'm talking about. I love my children, but I'm going to discipline them. Similarly, in the work environment. So when I give the data and I present the stats, in that one statistics in the book, Firms of Endearment, Sisodia, Sheth and Wolf have proven that of the top 500 companies, the S&P 500, this is their data, they looked at organizations over a 10-year period. And they found organizations that have shifted from that old command and control type of leadership to drive results and have now showing love and care and creating a psychologically safe environment for their people, have shown 1,059% return on investment over a 10-year period. The numbers don't lie.
For sure.
One organization that I know of in America, I know this organization, is WD-40. Gary Ridge is a former CEO. They're the guys that does that Q20 sprays and all. They're well known. They went through the training with us. And in 1 year, they showed a 54% increase in sales, in revenue.
Wow.
After doing our program. What I'm saying here is that, Ralph, the data shows that organizations that are showing more care for their people and creating a culture of really psychological safety, where leaders are connected deeply with their people on a different level, are showing a higher result of return. Our data have shown this. Our research have shown this. We've got a white paper that shows this. I can share it with you and the audience. That shows you that when you take care of your people well, they will work much harder. They'll give you discretionary effort. They will give you coming in after hours. They will never make excuses. They'll give you productivity at the highest level, which delivers on your bottom line.
Yeah.
So, but here's the beauty about what I'm saying. Not only does it give you the results, it also gives you the relationships with these people where they stay. And keeping staff retained in an organization is one of the biggest risks of not keeping them retained, right? Because the cost is so high in terms of turnover. But here's the thing. Why wouldn't you choose this kind of way of leadership if it works and it creates a better, strong environment for years to come? So sustainability is the key.
I think that's the question I have.
Yeah.
Is it this sort of leader that we were talking about earlier? What would your advice be to the team around them? Is it that, do we buy them? Does a team get a copy of the publication and you try and encourage the said leader to read it, which I think they might get offended at firstly.
Yeah. So
what would your approach be? Is it that you subtly do it? Is it,
So one of the things, Ralph, is to listen to the heart of the matter here. You see, people and human beings are not born with negative intentions. It's our experience over time in our lives that make us hard on the outside. And we get into the defense mechanism and we go into protectionism. I mean, the psychology around that, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And here's what I say. We never approach any organization. We never approach any person with judgment. That is not how we do things. Mm-hmm. When we say that we believe firmly, if you go to our website, blanchard.com or blanchard.co.za, our landing page says, we are at the heart of human achievement. And we want everybody to feel that heart connection with us. Mm. And therefore, our approach is quite simply, would you mind if we share our heart with you? Mm. We're going to share our heart with you from a Blanchard Companies. The organization I represent is very close to my heart because I know the CEO, the founder, the father of the organization, together with his wife, Ken and Margie Blanchard, personally, to tell you that they ooze with humility is putting it lightly. And they live by example. And this kind of leadership that we want to create is leaders that care. And therefore, when we operate and we share, this is what we're wanting to show you. this is the approach that we think you can take. What do you think?
Yeah.
And 99% of the time, there's a realization. And we have leaders sometimes that break down. There's guys that came to me and said, listen, I'm guilty of some of my bad leadership behaviors. I can see where I'm hurting my people. I need to go make some changes. And then we do like our organization, we have a wonderful tool. We believe in return on investment and measuring of impact. Mm-hmm. We don't want to just tick a box and say we've trained you. No way, Jose. Doesn't work like that. So we do what we call a business impact and behavior change. 90 days post learning. We do a pre-learning, during learning, and post learning. So pre-learning is before you come to the class. What is your culture like? What is the engagement survey look like? Give us those data. What is your customer complaints look like? Give us all that information. And then we have a starting point, your net promoter scores, your engagement surveys, all those wonderful metrics that you had before. Then we do the training. In South Africa, where we have launched Blanchard in Africa we have got a 98% satisfaction level since we started in July 2022 officially. In fact, I was just now in Uganda and I had a huge client, I don't want to mention names. I trained 171 of their leaders over the last 3.5 weeks, executive senior leaders and middle management. They gave us a 99% satisfaction level. Now, Ralf, these are numbers that they have said, not me. We give them 7 questions to answer and they give feedback. And the next step is 90 days from today. We're going to then go and do the same questionnaire. We ask them, how did they feel about the training? Was it impactful? Did they find value? Are they able to use it? During our learning journey, we use this quote quite substantially. Robert Sutton said this, and we remind them. The gap between knowing and doing is far greater than the gap between ignorance and knowledge. Let me repeat that. The gap between knowing and doing is far greater than the gap between ignorance and knowledge. Dr. Robert Sutton said that from Stanford University. Now, we remind the learners in class, the leaders, it's good to know, it's good to have all this information, but my question to you is, what are you going to do with it when you leave here? And so what we do is we provide post-learning support, coaching, and then we go and 3 months later, we've given them enough time to apply. And then our tools are available for 12 months. Everything they learn in class is available online for 12 months in our system called the Blanchard Exchange. And then what happens next? After 90 days, we send the questions to their staff. Did you see a shift in your leader's behavior? Are they diagnosing you on a goal or still you as a person? How are you feeling about your leader right now? And then we gather that information on a metrics, and then we give a report to the company to say before, during, and after, here's the data. This is what your people are saying. And if we don't see a movement, we'll say, right, let's have a meeting to check what went wrong. What didn't happen? Why wasn't it hard? What didn't you do? What do you think is the issue? 9 times out of 10, some of the clients we work with, some of the people that did the training tell us we didn't have time. That's not a good excuse for leaders.
So when they give that excuse, we didn't have time, what's the solution there?
So we give them the case. We make a case that if you do not invest time for your people, then who are you actually leading? So there's 4 leadership pillars that I speak about in class. I say, in organization, leaders are all across the board. Leaders face 4 things that you need to look at on a day-to-day basis. Your people, the process, the systems, and the resources. Every morning when you come to work, people, are my people here today? Are they doing their job? Do they need anything? Processes, are my processes working? Systems, okay, that's a big problem. Everybody got system problems, looks like, right? And then resources, am I capacity enough for everybody to do their work? And I say to leaders, how many of you focus 90% of your time on the 3 things that do not bring the biggest value? Guilty as charged. All their hands go up. Most leaders focus on the process, the systems, and the resources. They don't focus on the people. We just tell them you need to shift to people focus, because here's the thing. We call it the 2 parts of leadership in our servant leadership model. We say there's a pyramid, a triangle, a pyramid. Leaders, you are responsible. The first part, you are responsible to set a compelling vision and provide clear direction for your people by showing them the way, going the way, as well as demonstrating the values that the organization believes. You need to give them smart, clear goals to know what is expected of them. And when that happens at the top as a responsible leader, the people at the bottom will become responsive. So if you draw a triangle, the top of the triangle, we say leaders are responsible. The word is responsible at the top. And the line at the bottom of the triangle, people are responsive when they see a compelling vision. There's no force to do their work. Then the second part is we turn that pyramid upside down. This is the servant part of servant leadership. We turn it upside down. Right now, the people are at the top. We call that the implementation or execution of the goals. So the people become responsible. We call it eagles soaring and not ducks quacking now. So that means people are empowered to do what they need to do, which means leaders at the bottom, you provide support, coaching, cheering, and helping your people to become, creating that optimal motivating environments for them so that you're not involved with the day-to-day operations. And when they see that model, they realize that they are too operationally involved and they're actually getting overpaid for their jobs. And they say to me, you're right, I agree with you. So I need to focus on my people. And we say, well, if you want the benefit, if you want life balance, because what we're finding around the world, leaders are now becoming burnt out. You got the pressure from the top, you got the pressure from the bottom, and you squeezed in between. So where's the burnout happening? In the center. And most leaders want to run away, and then they fall into the trap of, ill health and all kinds of addictions as well. That's linked to that as well. So we want to help and create an environment that is really, where the leader takes responsibility.
What is the challenge, do you think? Because, you might have a servant leader intentionally who naturally is a servant leader, but they're doing too much operationally.
Yeah.
And they've gone to your course and they know what to do. They're still challenged. What are the typical things that's challenging them apart from the time?
Right. So the biggest challenge, I think, is trust.
Trust from themselves or is it trust in their people? Is it themselves they're not trusting?
So it's both. I would say it's both. With their people, they give them a piece of work, and if they take too long to do it, who ends up doing it?
How do they get around that? What's the solution to that?
Right. So let me give you the second thing, right? And I'll come to the solution. So the first thing, I believe, it's trust. They don't trust people with what they are doing, right? Then the second thing is micromanagement. Ralf, here's a problem statement. A challenge, right? But it's also, I see it as an opportunity. Leaders must stop believing they have all the answers to every problem. It's a big issue. And that's why I say sometimes it's a leadership problem. Because leaders feel the need to always tell their people what to do. I think it was Richard Branson or some famous guy said these words, why hire the best people and then tell them what to do? And it's very critical for us to understand that. So what are we saying? Leaders, you don't trust your people because you don't know their capacity and their capabilities, or you may know, but you're ignoring the signs. So you end up micromanaging. So there's the two aspects that we talk about, telling versus asking. It's a coaching mindset, leader as coach. So we tell leaders, do you believe your people are competent? So the two things that we look for when diagnosing. So here's the leader's point of view in terms of how do I diagnose whether I can trust people? We look at two things. So at Blanchard, we believe this. We believe amongst everything else in the world, there's only two things people don't perform at their goals. Competence, which means I cannot demonstrate I can do the job. Or commitment. I don't feel motivated or confident to do my job. 99% of my audience in leadership say it's not got nothing to do with competence. It's their commitment that's failing. They've been doing the job for 10 years. They know how to do. They don't need the process document to do their jobs. So competence, they can demonstrate. But commitment, they're lacking. And therefore, if they're lacking commitment, it means that it's not a matter of me training them. So what are we doing? We're putting the wrong thing, a square peg in a round hole. Situational approach to leadership says, hold on a second. If you know that they are competent, if you have a challenge in your team about a problem or you want to solve for something, who must you go to for your answers? Your people, not you. You don't have to give the answer. So immediately they see that we are solving for the wrong thing. And that's where that leadership malpractice comes in. We give people the wrong thing, not the right thing. So what we should be doing, in fact, if your people are competent, is not to tell, but to ask. What do you think we should do with this particular problem that we are facing right now? How do you think we should go about it? Is there anything that I can do? And we call it supportive leadership behaviors, where listening is the key skill. And then we call it facilitating facilitating, self-reliant problem solving. Those are the top two strengths that we teach you on as a leader. So you don't become the center of everything. You become obsolete over time and your people start to get to the best. And this is the quote that we use. The greatest of leaders, Ken Blanchard says this, the greatest of leaders is recognized when they're not present. Now, many leaders get scared when they hear that. What do you mean?
Oh, yeah.
I'm saying, listen to me, my friend. If you want to be a great leader, be recognized when you're not in the office and your people are running the business and they're running the ship without you. That's a sign of your leadership, not a sign of your weakness. So please understand that. And that's what great leaders must learn to understand. Don't put a square peg in the round hole. Don't solve for other people when they can't solve it themselves. And we teach this for parents as well, with their children. Our teenagers know better than us sometimes. But what are we trying to do? Because I'm the parent now, wear the parent hat, I'm the subject matter expert. Therefore, I need to tell. And we say no, as a parent. So we don't teach a business skill or work skill on leadership. We teach a life skill on leadership, by the way. I forgot to mention that. So we teach a holistic human aspect of how do you lead anybody for that matter. So therefore, to answer your question, it's really to show leaders that, have you ever stopped to think what your people think about it? And then the second question is, what would happen if you don't micromanage and if you don't tell?
Why is it so hard to do that? Why is it so hard to stop and ask your people to solve for these problems? Or is it?
I'll tell you why.
You give people these tools like you would a doctor, because I mean we talked about this malpractice, so we're going into medicine, and you say to someone you need to exercise or eat correctly, and they know they've got to do it. They've got they had the scan, they had the blood test. It's clear what their problem is, the diagnosis and the solution. And it's their own health. This is not an organization, they're people. They're not following it.
Right.
What's the scenario there? I mean, is it that we have to engage the employees to also come on board and understand that how do they rise to the challenges and not wait for their leaders to ask, how do you solve for these things?
Ralf, you're leading me towards what I want to say, right? So let me say two things on that point. Number one, leadership is a choice. Nobody's holding you at a gunpoint to lead your teams. So it's a choice. If it's a choice, then do you know that the choice is people? You're leading people. It's a choice to lead people, and therefore you have to make time for your people. All right, that's the first realization we bring to leaders, right? And therefore, you need to trust your people. If you're diagnosing your people and they're not yet competent, we never use the word incompetent in our world. We're very important in the power of words. We say, if people are not yet competent, what must you do, Mr. Leader? Is to teach them, train them, make them competent, give them the opportunity to becoming competent. And what would happen? The neuroscience of learning teaches us that we move from a place of unconscious incompetence to a place of conscious competence, right? Or unconscious competence, right? You know what I'm talking about. So similarly in learning, you can teach them, but do you know where they are at to diagnose them first and foremost? Do you know that they are competent or not? How do you know that? We teach them the skill of looking for demonstrated transferable knowledge and skills. Can they show you they can do it? Not just know it, but show it. So the question that you ask about, how do you bring about the awareness? How do you teach these leaders this? It's firstly to say that you don't have to come up with all the solutions. Your people have the solution. The second thing is you need to trust your people. And we teach them the model of trust, which is how do you trust somebody? We call it the ABCD model. If you trust somebody that's able to do what you say them to do, you trust them if they say they're able, they're competent. You trust people that are believable when they act with integrity. You trust people that you're connected to because they are fair, they are connected to you, they are close to you, you can trust them when they're connected to you, they show care. And then you trust people who are dependable, D. So the ABCD of trust is, do you know if your people are able, believable, connected, and dependable? Let's do a little self-assessment here, and then I want you to take that and give your people to do the same for you, to check yourself. Because you may rate yourself as high on able and low on dependable. What are you going to do about it? Self-realization, self-actualization, self-awareness, Ralf. So trust is the other component that we talked about. And so with people on the ground, I told you about the two parts of that pyramid now, right? Leader is responsible to set the vision. So we teach leaders on situational approach leadership. That's SL2. Then what? We turn the pyramid upside down. And then we teach the people on the ground, individual contributors. They have an equal responsibility to take action. I normally use my arm like this. I say, what does this mean? Africans, South Africans, what does this mean? Power to the people, Amandla, right? Amandla. I said, you need to take action for your own growth and development. Now get this, Ralf. We are taking this message to youth. We're doing a youth program right now with Varsity College. We're training youth around the country for free. We are giving it as part of our CSI. We have a program called Student Self-Leadership. We are training 13 to 18-year-olds how to take action for their own growth and development by setting SMART goals, by challenging assumed constraints, by being proactive, by using their points of power, by diagnosing their competence and commitment, and asking for what they need. We're teaching kids how to ask for what they need, Ralf. Can you believe that in this day and age? We know young people don't like to ask. They think everybody is a mind reader. We're teaching our young people, individual contributors, to lead themselves. We call it self-leadership. We have the adult program that organizations that we train their staff. So there's a bottom-up to them taking accountability and ownership for their goals, not to be worried about how your manager treats you, but do your goals well. Perform to the best of your ability. If you don't get rewarded or recognized, your competitors will steal you. It's like a brand on a shelf in a shop, right? When you walk into a shop, what do you like? Coke, Pepsi, water. What is your fancy? Where do you go to? Do you go to anywhere else except the brand you like? While the world in the marketplace right now are looking for top talent. And if you are recognized as one of those brands, they're going to come for you. You're going to get headhunted. Become the best version of yourself. Do good work, because you're leading yourself at the end of the day, and you become that master brand. So from the bottom up, we teach these young leaders, our individual contributors, to take accountability and ownership for their own development by asking for what they need, by challenging their leader upward to say, I don't understand this goal. Can you please be more clear? Can I get some clarity? Can you be more specific? Can you teach me or show me what a good job? Here's a tagline for you, Ralf. If you ever want to ask to teach somebody a new goal, ask this question or tell them, this is what a good job looks like. 99% of the time, they'll get it right the first time. We don't do that as leaders. We tell them what to do and we leave them, and 6 months to 12 months, we want to evaluate the performance. Doesn't work like that. It doesn't work in that case. All right. So I think for me, it's about the holistic organization, Ralf. We teach top down, bottom up, across the board. Trust is for everybody. Not only the leader must be trusted, but people on the ground must be trusted as well with the work that they've been given. So results and relationships is the ultimate outcome of everything we do.
Not one or the other. Jayson, It was so good to speak to you, and great to catch up. And I must say, in preparation for the podcast, just reading the book, I realized even myself, aspiring servant leader, it's so important to get involved and read these things. It just reminds you again, geez, what are the basics? These things are easy to implement, but we do need to be reminded. And so, thank you for the work that you're doing, and good luck to you with sorting out South Africa's leadership and Africa's leadership challenges.
Oh, thank you, Ralf. Appreciate the support. And we are just excited about the work that we have had. There's no challenges in my life, it's opportunities. We have a great opportunity here. And I like to say this, Mother Teresa said this. She said, you may not be able to feed 1,000, but you can feed one. My goal in my life, in my future, is to help one leader at a time make a difference, change his future. And the question I ask leaders is, what will you be remembered for? One day, when life ends, when the relationship ends, what will you be remembered for? As leaders that's watching this podcast today, my question to you leaders is, what do you want to be remembered for? You can't go back in time and change the past. Do you want to be the kind of leader that was hurtful, created toxic culture, or do you want to be the leader that others want to follow and emulate? And that for me is the goal here, Ralf, is ultimately to help leaders become the best versions of themselves. And we lead with love. I think my final comment is, let's bring love back into the way we are doing things. Love and care cannot be separated, and it must be demonstrated, not just lip service. Thank you, Ralf.
Love it. I love your question to the audience as well. It's very good. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jayson.
My pleasure. All right, Ralf. Thank you. Thank you for your time.